Hello. How's everybody doing? Can everyone hear me, by the way? If you can hear me, please let me know. Let's see if everyone can hear me. Okay, good. Good. Okay, let's just give it a few more minutes for everyone to jump on in. While you're waiting, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself in the chat, just kind of saying who you are, where you're calling from today. Your volume is very low. Let's turn that up. How's that? Better? Yes. Okay, good. I'll keep it at this level then. Okay, awesome. If you wouldn't mind just quickly introducing yourself in the chat. I recognize a few of the names from last time, but I don't recognize everybody. Hi there, Sebastian. Okay, you're a human that you live on Earth. Brilliant. Very, very specific. Love it. Oh, I thought it was you, Olivia. Thank you. Okay, we'll wait a few more minutes for everyone to jump on. If you've just joined us, we're just waiting for everyone to kind of jump on. If you wouldn't mind quickly messaging in the chat just to make sure that works, that would be great. Thank you. E is very useful. Samuel says hi. Hi, Samuel. Welcome. Okay, while we're all waiting, maybe you guys could tell me something about yourselves. Sebastian says, I eat food. You guys have been very specific today. Love it. Love it. You're giving me slight alien vibes, but it's fine. I am a living being on Earth. Again with the alien vibes. You're it feels like you're trying to convince me that you are human. Olivia has 5 dogs, which is incredible. Does anyone else have any pets? Okay, Sebastian's also on Earth. I really think everyone is actually an alien here. That is a lot of dogs. Alrighty, that is 5 past. Supili has a takeaway. Okay, what kind of takeaway do you have? Nice, nice. I'm really jealous now. I was gonna get a takeaway today, but then I decided to be healthy and not get one. But now I'm really jealous. Okay. Oh, that is the wrong screen. Do-do-do-do. There we go. Right. Can everyone see my presentation screen? If you can, please let me know. What? Don't worry, Affair. We will get to what we covered last week. Okay, someone has 2 gerbils. Brilliant. But yeah, can everyone see my screen? Samuel says yes. Thank you, Samuel. Okay, we can see. Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. Okay, so let's get back into it. First of all, welcome back to my Tutor Coding Squad's Day 2. My name is Fliss, and we are basically going to carry on with Python and pick up where we left off last time. So, just to kind of give an overview of what we're doing today, we are going to have a bit of a recap of last time, making sure that you all kind of get what we did last time. We are then going to move on to the 5 data types in Python. And we're also going to look at how you can work out what each type is within Python, and also how to cast 2 different types in Python, which is a very important skill. Then I'm going to show you where you can find help, because a lot of the times in Python it can get kind of confusing, but there are 2 different ways that you can figure out different functions and how they work. And then hopefully we'll get onto some activities today. We're going to look at making a dog years calculator and a Mab-libs, if anyone's heard of that. And if we have any extra time, we will look at sequence, selection, and iteration. So, just to recap what we did in day 1, we looked at what Python is. We discussed that it is a high-level language, a language that can be used by humans, basically. It's not a low-level language that is written in binary. We then looked at what idle is and how we can use that to create Python programming. Then we looked at what inputting and outputting is to the system and how we can do that with input and print. And then we learnt how to create variables, what they are. So variables are just a way of storing data. We learned how to store values in them and then how to use them elsewhere within the program. And then finally, we learned what integer mathematics is and how they are used. If you weren't here last week, don't worry. A lot of the stuff we're doing today will also be stuff that we did last week, but you can also look at the recordings from day 1. They should be up on the YouTube channel now. So, without further ado, let's move on to day 2. So the first thing we're going to look at is the 5 basic data types. So, when you create a variable, it will have a data type. Now, this data type determines the type of value that your variable will hold. Some programming languages, you have to state what data type you're using, but with Python, you don't. It will actually try to assume the data that you give it. Now, saying 5 data types here is actually kind of a lie. There are actually loads more data types, but when you're doing GCSE computer science, they really want you to focus on these 5 in particular. So we're going to look at them now. The 5 data types that you need to know are string, I think we covered that a little bit last time, and it's basically one or more alphanumeric characters. Alphanumeric is just a fancy way of saying either a letter or a number. Then we have integers, which are whole numbers. We also looked at those last time. So if you want to store a whole number for maths, that's where that comes from. We have float, which is a decimal number. So 123.45, if it has a decimal in it, it's a float. We have Boolean, which is very important for logic, as it can be either true or false. It can't be any other values. And then we have char, which is a single alphanumeric character. So those are the 5 basic data types. Before I move on, does anyone have any kind of questions? Oh. I think everyone is pretty okay for the now, so I will move on. Don't worry, we'll be using these. I'll show you again actually when you program. But there are some limitations to our data types. So the first one is that when we use integers and floats, they can't actually be joined together. They can't be concatenated. And also, numbers held in strings cannot be used in mathematical operations. So what that means is if you take in a string, you can't then use it as a number unless you change it. And this includes numbers using inputs. So anytime you use inputs, it's in the data type of string. So how do we fix this? Well, there is a simple solution: casting. So we're going to have a look at how casting works now. So what I'd like you to do, you guys feel free to follow along as well. If you could get up idle that we should have downloaded last time, I'll show you how to get that up as well on your computers. So welcome back to my computer screen. It's all clear now. So to get up idle, all you have to do is you go to your start. Feel free to follow along as well. You're going to click P for Python, and you should all have either Python 3.9 or Python 3.10. Doesn't really matter. But you open up that folder, and then you're going to open up idle. Now, one of these will work. I'm going to hope it's this one. If not, I'll have to open the other one. There we go. So, as we saw last time, this is the shell. This is like your virtual computer where all of your programs are going to get run. But to program, we need to actually have a file to program in. So, I'm going to create a new file. And I'm going to save it to, and please remember to save it somewhere you'll be able to find again. It will often ask you to save in this Python 3.9 thing. Don't do that. Save it in your documents or save it on your desktop. Save it somewhere you will find it. I'll go through this again many more times, but basically you want to create a file and then save it. So I've created a folder somewhere to store all this. There it is. Minecraft, my tutor coding sessions. And I'm going to call it day 2. So I'll give you guys a few seconds just to kind of get that sorted. Well, save as documents. Day 2. There we go. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds just to get that up, just to let you know what we've been doing so far. Is we're just getting up idle, and then we're creating a new file and saving that file somewhere on your computer that you'll be able to find. When you guys are happy with that, let me know in the chat, and I'll move on. So Farah has idle open. Awesome. We'll give everyone a few more minutes just to make sure you've got idle open, which is this lovely shell here, and then you're going to click File, New File, and then save that file somewhere in the program. Michael's also got idle up. Brilliant. We'll just wait another minute. Diet Beppis, I hope I'm saying your username right, has also got it up. Awesome. Alright. It's my keel. Oh, okay. I'm very sorry. And I'm glad at least I pronounced Diet Beppis right. Sorry, Michael. I'm sorry for pronouncing your name wrong. Okay, so let's move on to day 2 content. And Gail's done as well. Awesome. So, just to let you know, when I'm using these hashtags, I think I said it last time, but just so you know, that is a comment in your code. It means it doesn't get run, so you can write whatever you like there. So, let's look at all the different data types. So first we have string, which you can just create a variable and set it as a string. So a string, for example, would be a name. So my name, which is Fliss. Then you can have integers, such as age. Don't worry, Raven, you haven't missed anything just yet. So that is actually my age, by the way. You can have floats, which could be my bank account, which would be like, this is totally how much money I have. Yes, Farah, the hashtag is just a comment. Good eye there. Yeah, it's just a comment. Boolean, which is just true or false, tend to be used in logic. So something like, am I married? No. When you do Boolean, if you're doing true or false, the true or the false has to be capitalized. You see here where it's changed color slightly from black to orange. That's how you know you've done it correctly. If I was to type it out with just a non-capital letter, if I try and run it, it's going to give me an error because it's going to be like, that's not allowed. There you go. See, false is not defined, but if I put it with a capital letter, it is defined. So you've got to remember, if you're doing Booleans, capital letters. And then finally, char or character. So first letter of my name, for example. Oh, wait, well, I should probably actually do the first letter of my name. There we go. So there you go. Those are the 5 data types. Now, when I input stuff into the system, it will always come out as a string. So if I want to get out a number for adding, when the user types something in, it's always going to be a string, even if I just type in any number. And that can be really annoying because we might want to use it for mathematics and you can't do string mathematics. There's a way that we can prove that it's a string, and that is with this function here called type. So anything inside type will show what kind of type it is. For example, if I print out type of our variable name, I'm just going to quickly comment that out. It's going to print out string. If I print out the type of age, which is our integer variable, it's going to print out int. And I can do that for all of them. If I do married, it's going to print out Boolean. So that's what type does. Now, just to prove that if an input gives you a string, if I do the type of number and I run that, it's going to also, once I type that in, it's also going to give me a string. So I'm just going to stop there for a second. Does that all make sense so far? Do we have any other questions? No, miss. Brilliant. We'll wait for a few more messages to make sure. You're so lost. You did start a wee bit late, to be honest. What we're covering, Raven, is we're just looking at different data types. So when you create a variable, you have to tell it what type of data you're holding, whether you're holding a string, which is like words, whether you're doing integers, which are whole numbers. Can you go over type again really quick? I will. I will absolutely do that. You have floats, which are decimal numbers. You have Boolean, which can either be true or false. And then you have char, which are single characters. Now, type is used to determine which data type you're looking at, because sometimes we can forget. So if I was to use type, and if I put in type a string variable, so if I put in hello world, I'm just going to quickly comment that out because I don't want to add a number every time. If I run the program, it's going to print out string here. You see where it says str? That's string. If I was to put a number inside type, so it's going to print out class int or integer, and it's going to do the same for each one. Now, the important thing about type is it can also tell us what input is, and every single time, no matter what you put into input, it's always, always, always going to be a string. So if I do the type of number and I run the program, it doesn't matter what I type into number, I'm definitely typing in a number, but it's going to see it as a string every single time, which can be really annoying if we want to do some integer mathematics with it. Does that clear that up for you there, Farah? Awesome. Okay, so I will move on. No worries, I'm here to help. So now that we know that inputs will always be strings, sad face, we want to learn how to change it from different data types, and we can do that. We can convert strings into integers, integers into strings, ints into floats. We can do all of that kind of stuff, and there's a fancy name for it. It is called casting. So to convert a string to an integer, you use the function int. So if I have a string data type, I'll call it number string, and that is equal to 123. See how that is a string because we've got the quotation marks on it. If I now say that number string is the int of number string, now it's going to be a number, and I can prove that by printing out the type before and after. So if I print out before, print type of number string, and do the same afterwards, type number string. If I am typing too fast, by the way, let me know. I learnt touch typing from a very young age, so often people have trouble catching up, so if I do type too fast, let me know. But yeah, if I run this, as we can see, before in the program, it was a string, but using the converter, now it's an integer, which means now if I wanted to do any maths with it, I can now do that. The other important one is learning how to convert an integer back into a string, or just into a string in general. And this is really important because when we are using strings and numbers together, everything has to be a string. If I try to do, for example, let's say I have a number here, 10, and I have tried to print out my number is number, for example. In my head, I'll think, okay, that's going to print my number is 10. But what's actually going to happen is it's going to give me an error because it's going to say you can't concatenate strings with ints. So what we have to do for this to work is we're going to have to convert it back from an integer to a string. And the way we do that is we can just write number equals the string or str of number. And now this is going to work. So if I just run that again, boom. Okay, I'll put a space between that because that looks awful. But yeah, now we can use it because it's converted from a number to a string. So now it works. I'll just give you guys a few seconds just to try that out. When you're happy for me to move on, or if you've got any other questions, please let me know in the chat. You have confusion, Sebastian. That's fine. Do you mind maybe typing out a little bit what you're confused about? Everyone else, if you wouldn't mind just messaging me in the chat how you're finding it. You don't know, you just have confusion. Okay, I'll go through it again, no worries. How is everyone else finding it? You're a tad bit confused, but otherwise you're okay. Some people are a bit meh. I often find that it's a bit confusing until you start to use it in an actual program. Your mocks are coming soon, you found it helpful. Oh, I forgot about mocks. Oh gosh, you guys have got computer science mocks. I do not envy you. Kindly go through it one more time, please. Absolutely. So, just to kind of explain what casting is, sometimes we have our variables in one data type and we want to put it into another data type. So, to convert it from a string to an integer, we use int, and to convert it from integer to a string, we use string. And to check to make sure which data type we're in, we can then use type. So we've got this string here and we've converted it into an integer. And if we have a number here and we wanted to convert it into a string, we use string. It might make more sense when we actually start to use it. I'm in year 11, it's the first time I've heard about the type function. Oh, interesting. Those of you who are doing GCSE, are you doing it in Python or are you doing it in Java? What are you doing? Entire purposes you ancient. Oh dear. Yeah, those of you who are doing GCSE computer science, it is in Python. Okay, interesting. So this will be useful then. That's good to know. You're doing IGCSE. Oh, I know those are difficult. And you're doing Python, HTML, CSS. Okay, brilliant. This will definitely be useful. Cool. What I think we'll do is I'll move on. Trust me, this should make a bit more sense once we actually start to use it in actual program. Diet Beppers is doing a GCSE next year. Ooh, good luck. GCSEs are very important, but they can be a wee bit difficult. Yeah, I will move on and we'll come back to the stuff later on. So, the next part that I wanted to look at was where to find help. So, oh, you're going to do this, aren't you? Oh, okay. Where to find help. So often when we're programming, it can get a wee bit confusing, and sometimes you just want something to explain it to you. And in Python, there are two main ways of finding help. One is using the help function, and the other one is using the Python library documentation. The first one is a little bit more explanatory, a little bit more easier than the second one, but the second one's still just as important, especially if you're doing kind of GCSE or A levels. Kind of, it's good to know what documentation is and how to use it. But if you don't understand documentation today and you're doing GCSE or something similar, do not worry. It shouldn't come up too much, but it's still a good thing to know. So let's cover the help function first. So if I bring back up Python and idle. Cool. So let's first have a look at the help function. So we use the help function not actually in our program, but we use it in the shell itself. And what you do is if you ever come across a function you don't understand, you can type it in the function here. So if you type help, for example, and inside the brackets you write input, even better if you put it actually inside the brackets, there we go, and you press enter, it tells you what input is. It says that input reads a string from standard input. It gives you a couple of other explanations that you don't really need, but it basically tells you what it does. If you type in help print, for example, into the shell, it tells you prints a value into the stream, aka into the shell. It explains what it does. Now, ones that it's not always the most helpful. So if I type in help in string, for example, oh dear, might be a bit too much for it to handle. Let's try help int. There we go. So these ones are a wee bit long and a wee bit more confusing. So not all, some of them give way more detailed feedback than necessary, but it can be a good starting point. Let's restart the show. There we go. If you're looking for help. So if you ever get stuck on a function, you can always type in help, open brackets, close brackets, and then the name of whatever thing you're stuck on. And it should give you some more information about it. This second option, let's just quickly get that up, is using the documentation. Now, anytime something is designed in computer science, whether that be a programming language or an API or something that's got to be used by someone else, more often than not, people will write documentation on how to use it and how everything works. Some of it is a bit more complicated than others, but it's a good idea to know where to find this and how to read it. So for Python, at least, if you go to this link, so docs.python.org, you can even just search Python documentation, and it will be the first thing that comes up here. We've got the standard library, and that will come up. Having a look at this, it will tell you all the different parts of how Python works. So for example, let's say I wanted to look at how print worked. I could just type in print, and it will tell me how print works. So prints objects to the text stream file, and you can search for any function that you're stuck on. Now, this will have a lot of detail. It's way more detailed than you need, but if you get stuck, a documentation is a good way to look at, essentially. So those are the two ways, basically. Before I move on to the activities, do any of you have any questions about either the help function or what documentation is? If not, feel free to say in the chat. Nope, carry on. Awesome. That is what I'll do. Okay. So now let's actually get on to some activities. So it's all good in learning about Python, but normally the best way to learn something is to do it yourself. So we are going to try and, hopefully with the amount of time we have, create two different programs today. One is a dog years calculator, and the other one is Mab-libs. So let's start. So I'm going to create, in my idle shell setup here, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it dog years. I'm going to save it somewhere else. Someone says, interesting. Awesome. I'm glad I could be interesting. Okay, so what this program is going to do is it's going to input your human age, so it will ask you a question, what is your age? And then it's going to print out what your age would be if you were a dog. So let's start by creating a variable to hold. Can you please go over the help bit in Python again? Yeah, absolutely. So before I make the dog use calculator, I'll just quickly go through help. Basically, help is just a tool that you can use in the shell. So if you type help, and then you type in whatever function you're stuck on, like input, for example, it will tell you about input. If I put help int, for example, it's going to tell me all about how input works. Some of it is a bit longer than others, but that's basically what it is. It's just a way to explain in a lot of detail how each function works. So that's what that is. So going back to the dog years calculator, the first thing we need is a variable to hold our human age. So I'm going to call it human age. And I'm going to set it to be an input. So I'm going to say input, what is your age? Human. And then if I run that program, I can then type in my age. Easy peasy. To prove that's working, we can say print your human age is. Now we can use dot format from last time to make it look nice, so I can use open squiggly brackets, close squiggly brackets, dot format, human age. And what that does is Well, I'll show you what it does. If I run the program and I type in my age, it puts the human age part into the squiggly brackets here. So it prints it out nice and neatly for you. Now this all works fine because human age is a string, but we want to be able to do mathematics with it. We want to work out their age in dog years, so we need to convert it from a string to an integer. And then the way that we do that, we've already had a look at that before. If you want to take a string and turn it into an integer, well, you're going to use this function here, int. So I'm going to say that human age is equal to the int of human age. So I've now changed it so it's a integer. Now I can do some mathematics. Now those of you from before will remember some of the operators, which is a fancy word for saying the bit in between the two numbers, so a plus sign or a minus sign or a times sign, divide sign. That's what an operator is. So we're going to use one of those now. Now to convert from human age, dog age is approximately 4 times a human age, or at least according to my Google search this morning. So if we want to work out what the dog age is, we will create a variable, we'll call it dog age, and we'll make it human age times 4. Okay, I'm going to slow down here and give you guys a chance to type that all in. When you guys want me to carry on, just type in the chat carry on and I will carry on. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but in the chat, Sam here has put a form that if you guys could fill out, it just tells us if you like these sessions and how to improve. If you guys also wouldn't mind filling that out, that would be great. Okay. I think everyone has had a chance to catch up. I'm gonna carry on. If anyone needs me to slow down, please type in the chat to slow down, and I will. But oh, Super Silly says no. I don't know if you mean no to carry on. Slow down. Okay, I will wait for a few seconds. No worries. I do realize I can type quite fast. Also, just to let you guys know, you don't need to type out these comments. That's just to help me explain what's going on, but you don't need to type those out. You only need to type out the actual code. Just give you guys a few more minutes just to type everything up. Okay, I am going to move on now, guys. If you haven't fully caught up yet, don't worry, there'll be plenty of time for you to catch up, and you can also watch the recording back if you need to. But I'm going to move on. So, yeah, okay, well, someone already texted, okay, I'm done, carry on. That's what I'm going to do. So, once you have worked out what the dog age is, we need now to convert it back from a integer now to a string. So we're going to convert dog age to a string, and this is for printing purposes. For printing. Now, those of you who remember how to do this will already be able to type it out quicker than me, but what you're going to do is you're going to write dog age equals string dog age. And that will convert the string, the int, back into a string. And then the last part is we need to tell the user whether what their actual dog age is. So we're going to write print equals your dog age is approximately, wait, that's how you spell it, years old. Dot format, and inside the format brackets you're going to write dog age. So what that does is, just to go through it again, you're going to convert this integer dog age into a string, and then you can print it out. So just to run that program, I'm going to click Run Module. I'm going to put in my human age, which is 5, and then your human age is 5, and your dog age is approximately 20 years old. So that's how that works. Do I have any questions on how that works? I'll wait a minute just to see if anyone's got any questions. Raven says nope. Okay. Does that all make sense to everybody? If you could just quickly let me know in the chat whether or not it makes sense. What? Oh, Ferry's got a question. What would happen if you never converted the string into an integer and continue the code? I will show you. So let's say, let's completely comment this out. Let's say that we don't convert it. If I run the program, and I say, okay, my age is 13. Huh, it does work. Hang on. Ah, I know why. It shouldn't work, but it does. So the reason why that's happening is because we formatted it. What if I do that? Yeah. So with formatting, it already kind of does the conversion for you. So you don't technically need to convert it. But if you're doing something called concatenation, so if I do this, for example, print your dog age is dog age years old, that won't work, I believe, because you're using a plus sign in between it. But that's a very good question. It seems like everyone is 52 in dog years. So that's what would happen. Fair. Anyone else want to tell me what their dog is? So someone's 56 in dog years, someone's 52. You'd all be very old if you were dogs. Alrighty. I think we've got time to do one more thing and then we will wrap up for today. So I'm just going to press save on that program. It is sad but true. Yes, if you were all dogs, you would all be very old, which is very sad. But yes, the second program that we'll try and cover today, but we may not get time to finish, would be the Mab-libs program. Some of you might have heard what Mab-libs are, some of you might not. Basically, it's just sometimes they show up in magazines. They're kind of questionnaires where you have to fill out a colour and a fruit and a number, and it gives you a crazy kind of story. Sebastian says my actual dog is 12 in dog years. Oh, cute. But yeah, so Mab-libs is basically you can create a funny story by inputting in a bunch of data. Now, luckily, since we've learned how to input a bunch of data, we can then do this in Python. So I came up with a story, and I'm going to use this story that I came up with. So I came up with a story, which today we picked apples from blank orchard. I had no idea there were so many different varieties of apple. I ate colour apples straight off the tee, and they tasted like foods. There was adjective apple that looked like thing. When our bag was full, we went on free haid ride to place and back. We're going to make apple food and thing pies. So I will show you how to create a Mab-libs. I'm gonna get rid of that last sentence because it's gonna take too long. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different variables. So we're going to have 6 different variables and 6 different inputs for our Mab-lib program. So let's start by asking the user a person variable, and we're going to ask them name a person. Then we need a color variable, so we can do color. I'll do the English spelling equals input name a color. Then I can do foods. You're probably seeing where this is going. Food equals input name a food. I'm going to leave a space in between those so people can type properly. Adjective input give me an adjective. And finally, oh, we've got 2 more. Thing equals input name me a thing. And finally, place equals input name me a place. Now this is just an example story, by the way. If you guys have got any better stories, feel free to use those. So once we have our Mab-lib variables, we can then print out our story. So you can say print today we picked up blank apple from blank's orchard, and you can copy out your story like so. So I'm just going to do 2 sentences for now because I'm kind of running out of time. And then apples that tasted like foods. Let's just make sure that looks correct. Yep. And you can copy something like that. And that is how you make a Mab-libs program. Before I wrap up this session, do you guys have any questions about either dog ears program or the Mab-libs program? You sort of understand, Sebastian. Cool, that's fine. It might be better if you try it out for yourself. I'll leave this program up here like this. Anyone else got any questions or anything? Could we use the format function at the end instead of person? Yes, you absolutely can do that. Just to show you that you can, I'm going to rewrite this last sentence to show you that you can. Brilliant eye there, Farah, by the way. But yes, I'm just going to recopy this sentence and put this down here. If you wanted to be a wee bit nicer and neater, you can use the squiggly brackets instead of the plus variable stuff, like, and you can then use dot format, and then you can put the first variable here and then use a comma to separate for the second variable. So that's the exact same sentence, but in the lovely format option. So yes, you're correct there, Farah. Okay, that was very helpful. You're very welcome, Gail. I'm glad it was helpful. Okay, so let's just quickly wrap up what we did this session. We started this session by recapping what we did last session, how we introduced Python and what the IDA shell is, how to create variables and inputting and outputting. Today, we looked at the different types of variables. We looked at the 5 main data types that you need to know for GCSE. That is string, integer, float, Boolean, and char. And then we learned about the limitations between them and how we can kind of solve those by doing casting. And then, to prove how casting works, we made a dog years calculator, which all of you seem to work out all your dog years, which is great. And we also looked at a Mab-libs generator to learn about how inputting and outputting works a bit more. I hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did. You've all been such a lovely class today. I've got about a minute left, so if you've got any more questions that you want to ask me, feel free to. But I hope you enjoyed the session. Alrighty, guys, that is 6 o'clock now, so I'm going to end the stream here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.